Questions will be asked and they will be answered. This is the A to A Bar Review. Some people say the 1990s was the last great decade. In the 1990s, people were actually looking forward to the 2000s. Now, 25 years into the new exciting world, people want to get back to the 1990s, where people were more independent and did not rely on the internet or the smartphone as much to get through a day or even an hour. In this video, we discuss the 1990s and California Dreams, an American television sitcom that aired between 1992 and 1996, and the cultural impact that the show had on its fans. We meet Addi, and he describes the impact that the show had on him while growing up in England in the 1990s. So grab yourself a soda pop from the kitchen bar and let us review California Dreams. California Dreams hit the screens between 1992 and 1996. Can you describe your environment back then in England in the 1990s?
Right. Well, in that time, I was still in high school. Well, I was in high school, I would say. I left in 99. And England here it was fine. I mean, we were just growing up. Our environment was just basically go to school, come home, have dinner, go to bed, and then repeat the whole thing the very next day. And the environment we were in, it was just fun being a teenager because we relied on actual interaction. We relied on no technology. I think the only technology we ever tried we used was just games consoles, to tell you the truth. And when California Dreams came in, to me, it was just like, I was like this, oof, that is the best teen sitcom I've ever seen. Because it had a lot of real life issues that people need to wake up and realize that things like that can actually happen. And there were a lot of meaningful episodes that sent really good messages out to people as well, like use of steroids, smoking, gambling, gangs. And one good episode, which was a part of the gambling episode, was parents not giving their kids enough attention, because if they don't give them the right amount of attention, then what can happen is they could go down the wrong path, which is what Sly Winkle, Michael Caine's character, if he's listening, big shout out, what he was doing in there. But it was a message that he was sending out to people. Look, if you start gambling, this is what's going to happen. You're going to start getting involved with the wrong people who are going to end up threatening you to say, well, you owe me money, so give me the money, or this is going to happen, that's going to happen to you.
Well, there's a lot of universal themes, right? Like Tony Wicks' character, so some gang violence, and that's sort of gang violence culture in England as well.
Oh, it was. I mean, it was back in the 90s, the gang culture. It wasn't as bad as it is now, I would say. A lot of gangs nowadays carry knives, whereas back in them days, people would just settle their problems with their fist. But nowadays, the gang culture has gotten a little bit worse, where you read stuff on the news where like so-and-so just got stabbed for no apparent reason. Or what we had in England a few years ago was about 2-3 years ago in my own city. There was a couple of students walking home at night, and then all of a sudden, from nowhere, so I just randomly stabbed them both to death. It was astonishing. It was shocking to hear that. Like, they come in and make something of their lives, and then all of a sudden, that's what's happened to them. It was, my heart goes out to the families, and but it was just a very sad thing to hear that, especially like with gangs. It's like, what is the future of being in a gang? There's no future whatsoever. I hate to say it, but it's an actual fact. There is no future of being in a gang other than you're going to end up in prison because people can't, they're not being guided properly. They're just misguided people who've gone down the wrong path, and that's the only path that they know now in life. But once you go down there is no way of coming back.
And California Dreams tries to provide that guidance. Friends like Jake Summers and Tiffani trying to help Tony deal with that situation where his friend is injured and get away from the gang, and then of course Tony helping that friend from the hood to pick another way.
Yeah, he was. I can remember that. That was a great message. He was saying that when Tony brings her back to the fight, where his friends brought a gun, and he's like, "Are you crazy bringing a gun here of all places?" And he's like, "Yeah, if you kill these two, you're ending your own life." And he's basically saying the true thing is, if you're looking, basically that saying that comes in, if you're going to look for revenge, start by digging two graves. And that's what he was basically doing, the friend. He was basically digging a grave for himself, where he's like, your life's over at the age of 18 because of two bullets. You shot your own life away, not these two who attacked your friend. They're going to get what's coming to them. But what about when he says, what about your life? Think of what's going to happen to you. And then before you know it, that lad's mother comes to stop him. And the whole community comes together. And that was a beautiful moment when the whole community, and Jake's there as well. And Jake's not afraid to stand up to them gang members. God knows what they were carrying. They may have not been carrying on themselves, but he was like stopping them, like, you're not going anywhere. You're going to pay for what you did to him. And Jake didn't even know that friend of his, of Tony's friend, but he was willing to jump in there and stop Tony. And Tony, the other great bit I just remembered, Raymond, was when when Jake says to Tony, look, I know what it's like to go around and hit somebody. You feel good for a few seconds, but afterwards you feel like, why did you do it? What did you get out of it? What was the real, what was the overall outcome that you wanted from this? You can't come up with an answer. Why? Because there was no answer to come up. There was absolutely nothing.
People, when they get into the situation, they tend to forget about the long-term consequences. Like if you're going to fight someone, you might be charged with assault. And if you fight someone, you could actually injure that person seriously. You don't want to injure or kill that other person. And I was also reminded of a line in Frank McCourt's book, Angela's Ashes. People want me to die for a country, but who wants me to live for it? You know, so always better to walk away and to find a reason to live on.
It takes a really strong person to walk away from a confrontation, but it takes a cowardly individual who's seeking a confrontation of absolute no reason. And that's the whole thing that you need to remember is you have nothing to prove to anybody. It's just a person barking for the sake of attention. There is no need of it. Walk away. Live life another day. That's basically what it is.
I remember William James Jones, who plays Tony Wicks, did martial arts. He was in a martial arts movie, A Dangerous Place, right, with Ted Jan Roberts. I'm not sure if he did any karate in there, but for some reason I've always thought he did something like karate or kung fu.
Tell you the truth, I wouldn't know. I mean, I don't even know he did another movie. I remembered him mainly as that because I know now he's no longer acting. He's now a clinical psychologist, I believe. Dr. William James Jones, and a big shout out to him as well. Hope he's doing good. And to me, he'll always be Tony Wicks. It's like anytime you see one of those characters, you just all instantaneously remember them as what you admire them, what you saw them as first. Like if you see Michael Caine, you always think of him as Sly Winkle. If you look at Jay Anthony Franke, he's Jake Summers. I can remember doing his interview, and a few times it'd be like, "Hey, thanks, Jake." I mean, Jay. I mean, sorry, it just spills out sometimes. And but that's what a great thing because they left a great mark on kids back in the 90s, to tell you the truth. And even now when you watch the shows on YouTube and the comments people still leave there, it's like, I love this show, I love that show, and I love so and so on the show. But that's what it is. They've left a great mark for people to remember internally for all eternity.
California Dreams in high school and was about a band. You were in a high school, so were you also in a music band? What's going to be the next big thing?
I mean, like the song they made in it, and the next big thing. I remember that track, so it's a good one. You pointed that out, Raymond. No, to say the truth, I don't know if people remember this who watched this interview. but I'll tell it anyway. But every year in high school at Christmas, we'd have a talent show. It was called a pop mime, and but in America they call it lip sync contest. And what happened was first 3 years I was doing, actually no, first 2 years I was doing it by myself. Year three I joined teams with somebody. And last 2 years, I had all my friends, and they said, "Look, we want to come on the stage with you and do this." So I said, "All right, fine, come on stage. It would be quite fun." Fortunately, I never won any year, but I didn't do it just for the sake of winning. I did it because I enjoyed it. And afterwards we were deciding, should we go for this for the rest of our lives after we leave school? What, become a band, travel the road, make millions of pounds, and make a lot of money and do that. I said, yeah, we can buy everything. We can do that. It's when you're growing up, all the hormones are just thinking that you could do this, you could do that, you could do this. You think you're very invincible because you kind of, you feel like you know everything, but in actuality, at that age, you don't know anything because you haven't had any actual life experience. You're just in school. I can remember one thing one teacher said was, when school ends, that is when life begins. What you're going to really do with it. And we were thinking about it, but there was a lot of yeses, there was a lot of nos. There was never a solid agreement. There was never a solid agreement like, oh, we're going to become a band. We could be like, I don't know, the Backstreet Boys. We could be like California Dreams, but none of us could play instruments to save our lives. We were good at making a lot of noise, but never any actual music. So, yeah, that dream kind of went out the window.
In your band, were you more like Jake Summers or Matt Garrison or Tony Wicks?
I would say a bit like organizing wise, I'd say Jake, because I would organize, oh, we're going to do this and do that. Singing wise, I'd say a bit like Matt, but I could never play the drums as great as Tony. I couldn't, unless I wanted to make a lot of racket on them, but that'll be it. But Tony Wicks, without a shadow of a doubt, he was great. He was a great drummer, but we never decided who would do what and everything. But like I said, we were just kids. We didn't know what we were doing back then. What about yourself? Was you in a band?
Not in a band, but the character I liked the most, or I wanted to be like, probably like Sly, the Joker in the class. Always tried to find a catchphrase. Uh, so I'm
Yeah,
still working on the catchphrase. Yeah, baboom.
baboom, baboom.
Yeah,
He's like, hey,
yeah.
nobody babooms but me. I remember, one thing I liked about Sly, talking to him as a character, he's one of those peoples where he was like a lovable joker. You want to hate him, but you couldn't hate him. He just had that special kind of aura about him. It was like, why can you like I say why can I not hate this person? Because the way all he cared about was money, try to get a girl. But like every girl would just either slap him, throw water on him, and that was about it. But deep down inside him, I would say Sly really cared about his friends. I can remember that episode where Tiffani was asking him to get steroids, but he was like, "No, look." When he's saying, "Look, if you keep this up, you're going to die from all this stuff," and he was pointing it out. And I can remember when the bit where they're confronting Tiffani about it, and she goes, oh, "You're taking steroids." Sly told us about it. He goes, "Who are you going to believe, me or Sly?" He's like, and Jake, his comment was just so funny. He goes, "Normally that'd be a slam dunk, but in this case, we believe Sly." That was perfect comedic timing by on Jay Anthony Franke's behalf, where he goes, yeah, "Normally we know that answer. Yeah, we would believe you, but in this case, we have to believe him. It's clearly obvious because they just picked it up themselves as like." How come overnight she just became this instant phenomenal athlete where it takes athletes years to build up to that level, but she's doing it in half the time or less time or no time. But it's that's what the dangers of what steroids does to you. It can destroy you as a person. It can destroy your health over time as well. The more you keep injecting that stuff into your body.
The episode about tobacco is another
Yeah.
fine example of
Yeah.
looking after your friends.
Oh yeah, yeah. But they were saying to Jake about, don't stop smoking. And then 1 minute he's having a small pack of cigarettes. Next thing you know, he's having the whole big pack of cigarettes, and they're helping him do it. But he's like, no. But then when reality hits him at a very young age, where the uncle says, "Look, this is what's happened to me. and I don't have much time left now. And he just throws the cigarettes. That was just amazing. That bit of acting by Jay when he was like kicking the cupboard and he breaks down. He's like, "What am I doing to myself?" And he tells everyone, "Look, Uncle Frank's, not going to live much longer," and they'll rush to his help, regardless of anything. All those friends were there for him. So that's one thing that I loved about that show the most was that regardless of Sly doing gambling, they were there for him. Regardless of Mark Winkle, Aaron Jackson's character, when he was plagued with stage fright, they were there for him. And Sly showed one of the nicer sides of Sly, where he was like, it was my fault you like this, you know what? But I do feel sorry. And he's like, "Do you really mean that?" I goes, "Yeah, I do really mean that." I goes, "Well, that's pretty cool if you tell me that, cause." And yeah, they helped him out. And then the other bit was, like you mentioned, the gang episode where they were rushing towards his help and Tony's help, and they stopped it. It's him from doing something crazy. And the other bits, great aspects were when in season one, or sorry, beginning of season two, where Jenny's packing up to go to Rome, and they were saying, Jake saying, she goes, "No, I want to stay because of Jake." He's like, "No, I don't want you ruining your life because of me. I want you to take this opportunity," because he knows if she turns this down, it's never coming again. It's a great way of telling people from a young age, when an opportunity comes knocking at your door, go answer it because it's not coming back ever again. And the other episode is where what was it? Oh yeah, when Sam moves to America and they want to make her feel as welcomed as possible because she has nobody but this band she's turned into a family over time. And she says that as well. "I expected to meet friends, but I met a family instead," which was quite really sweet of him.
That was the episode where she wanted to go back to Hong Kong for
Yeah,
Chinese New Year, and
yeah,
she wasn't able to go. So the band brought Chinese New Year to Sharkeys, and then the
yeah.
nice bit at the end where they brought her parents over. Couldn't get over to Hong Kong, but we can bring your parents over.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was sweet, and she was just her face just dropped. One of the things I remember is funny about that episode where the Sam's dad goes, "Tell us about this band you've been going on and on and on and on and on and on and on about." And she goes, "Yeah, Samantha Wu and the California Dreams." They're all looking at her like, "What?" It's like, I don't know where they got that bit from. She's trying to take all the credit for everything. But I seen Jenny Kwan. My God, she's like she hasn't aged a bit. She no, I do mean that in a complimentary way. She still looks exactly the same. I think she definitely looks the same. Michael Cade still looks the same. Kelly Packard looks quite the same as well. I know Aaron Jackson has changed. Jay Anthony Franke has changed, but he's still as cool as ever, to tell you the truth. And having the pleasure of speaking to him and interviewing him on my show was a dream come true. I mean, I was saying to all my friends who I told about me interviewing him, and they were like, "No way did you interview him?" I said, "Yeah, I interviewed him. I put the show on, so I interviewed him." I said, "If you told me 30 years ago that I'm going to be talking to this guy down the line, I wouldn't believe you." Yeah, 30 years later, had the opportunity. So again, I'm grateful.
what did the show teach you about American culture and the people? And what
Um,
appeal and effect did the show have on you growing up in England? Which characters do you admire the most?
all right, how much time do you have? Right, so okay, so what it taught me a lot about American culture, because like I mentioned, back when it was on in England, I was still in school myself. School, it had its moments, but I just kept thinking, I just wish school was a bit more like California Dreams, a bit more relaxed. It was a bit more, it would be a bit more easier to go to because we had to wear school uniforms every single day to school. And we just couldn't wait till it was kind of finished so we didn't have to wear them uniforms ever again. It taught me a lot. I thought literally the American culture was so much cooler. It was, I mean, I was a kid growing up. You didn't know right from wrong or whatnot. And it was so much cooler. It was so much more interesting. And it kept asking you that question in your head. What would school be like if I was living in America? And what would, because I remember people there would bring cars to school, drive cars to school. They would drive, they would ride motorcycles. We couldn't do that. You all had to jump on a bus to go to school every day, or me, in my case, I would just walk to school every single day. And it was, it taught me a lot. Like, it felt like America back then was, well, probably still is, and it had a lot more freedom towards teenagers. Teenagers had way more freedom there than they did here. And one of the things, I just wish there was a cool place that we had. We didn't have a cool cafe like, like a diner like Sharkeys. It would be cool if we did, because we can go there and just hang out and get lunch from there if we had to. We wasn't allowed to leave the school premises until school had finished. And but then you end up getting those school passes, and then we'd got them. We would go hang out at either a friend's house who lived literally right next door to the school. So we'd get food. We'd go to his house, probably maybe watch a movie or something, because we didn't have Netflix back then. We didn't have YouTube back then. If you wanted to watch California Dreams, you had to record it whenever it was on them big VHS tapes, if you remember as well. And those bring back memories. And you'd record it, and then you'd watch it, and then okay, hours coming to an end. We better get back to school. We'd rush back to school, and last two classes of the day, and that was it. We were done for the day. Best character I admired the most, without a shadow of a doubt, was Jake Summers. I admired all of them, but Jake was my overall favorite because one thing I remember what Jay Anthony Franke said in my interview, big shout out to him as well, was how the best way of describing Jake in his own words was Jake was like a man trapped in a teenager's body. He knew how to do things. He was kind of like the rebel, or he was like the cool bad boy biker, but he had a heart of gold on him. And he just knew things that you wouldn't learn in high school, but he learned it himself, like mechanics, like somebody growing up at that age, but he already knows how to put a bike together. That's quite cool. He knew how to track down bike parts for the bike. He'd go, I got to go here to pick it up. And then that was without the use of sat navs back then. People used the big paper maps and everything too. I got to go here to there and everything. And he just got the job done. That's one thing I liked about him. But one thing I liked the most about Jake Summers was the fact that he always stood up for his friends. If somebody picked on one of his friends, he'd jump in and say, "You better leave him alone, or I'm going to deal with you." Like when that episode where people are picking on Sly because of a bad date, and he goes, "Sly, you can't let people talk to you like that. You got to stand up for yourself." Basically, when that guy comes to Sly's face and he's making fun of him, and he goes, "Go count your teeth before the number changes." I was like, whoa, that is one cool threat. But yeah, definitely. I mean, Sly, regardless of how Sly Winkle, regardless of how scheming he would be and a bit unscrupulous, but deep down inside him, he did care about his friends, where he wouldn't let them go astray either, and he would fess up to whenever he was wrong. And when I can remember one episode where it showed where he was talking to a girl online, then he meets her and he realized, oh, she's blind. And he was saying that, I don't think I can go out with her because of this. It's that saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. He realized what a mistake he made and he goes back and makes amends. And that's quite good doing that age where, you realize you were wrong. And you're like, you better fix this problem before you don't have that opportunity anymore. And he does. And that was a good thing about him.
A lot of people are, probably think, this is all a bit fanciful. Nobody rides on a Harley, right, to school and has all this sort of street smart. But no, these people do exist. Growing up, I had a friend who lived out in the country, so he had to drive. So he was driving a Vauxhall Beaver, and he knew all about cars because he wanted to be a mechanic. So he lived out in the country. He had all these sort of different cars, but V8s and all that, and so he was that kind of character, a motorhead. And our high school was right next to a big mall, like Westfield Mall. So,
nice.
so we were at lunchtime. We couldn't. at lunchtime we weren't allowed to leave the grounds. So we went to the bike sheds and just scaled over the fences and just ran through the malls. And half the fun was getting chased by the security guards. Yeah. So
Definitely.
and so Sharkeys had a menu, a cheeseburger for $4.50.
Yeah.
They also had a payphone in the hall.
Yeah.
No cell phones. And this was in the 90s. So what did you enjoy about the 90s and what do you miss today?
I'd actually say there was a lot of stuff I missed about the 90s. The TV shows were a lot better, I would say. There was a lot more realistic topics on there. Um, what else was there? There was definitely the food. The food was a lot more natural. It was a lot more, yeah, it was, like I say, it was a lot more natural. There wasn't much processed food as there is today. The chocolate was a lot better, I would say. But one of the things I do definitely miss about the 90s was the fact that we had actual human interaction where I would talk to somebody and they would talk to me right there. Like I'd be sitting here with each other. And that was the best thing I would like. That's what I miss the most, where we spoke. We weren't on the phones. Even if somebody sat at the end of the table, I'm sat over here. We wasn't talking to each other through text messages. We would talk to each other by actual human interaction. But that has been lost today's because people rely more on technology than they rely on an intellect. They rely on experience. You'll never gain experience through a phone. I hate to say it, but you'll never will. You will always gain actual life experience by giving actual life a chance, a shot at something. And people, I can remember when we had our reunion, our 25th reunion last year. It wasn't the big reunion as I was expecting it would be, but me and my friends, we just decided, you know what, we might as well just do our own reunion. And we all met up, we went out of town, and we just reminisced about school. And we came back, and then we looked at the old place, the old hangout spots, as we'd say. We like, oh, do you remember when that happened over there? Do you remember when this happened over there? Do you remember when that happened over there? And it was just so much fun bringing it back. It just felt like nothing had changed because we were actually again talking to each other without the use of technology. Because we relied on that growing up, and we relied on intellect even until now. We relied on actual interaction, which was the best thing.
How do you describe the 90s and the television sitcoms in that period compared to, today's sitcoms?
There's a lot of quick wit, I would say. It was definitely, especially in teen sitcoms as well. There was a lot of quick wits out there as well. Like the sarcasm was just so funny. But nowadays, you have to be extremely careful what you say, even if it's acting. You don't want people can sometimes still find offense to something where you have to tailor make and be very cautious, be very careful. But back then, you pretty much everybody just said what they wanted to say, isn't it? They'd make fun of people, they'd make fun of that, and then. But I think personally, back then, sitcoms, regardless of what they were, whether they were sitcoms for adults, sitcoms for teenagers, they had a lot of real life issues that people overlook nowadays. But there was a lot of issues back then as well, especially in California Dreams, for example, especially when, as I mentioned beforehand, the gambling was like that's what happens when you don't give your kid the attention that they need. Because if you don't give them the attention, they're going to be led astray, and then they're going to go down the wrong path. And it's like last thing you want to do as a parent is fail as a parent. And other aspects as well, like again, don't hang out with the wrong crowd. You're going to get in a lot of trouble. They may look cool to your face, but in actuality, you don't know what they're plotting behind your back. They're planning to, say, no, do this, do that. It's like you do what's called the gang initiation. Like you do this, and you become part of our gang for the rest of your life. And it's just it touched up a lot of important factors that you got to remember, even though it might be fictional, but it's factual what it's telling you. The subject itself is factual. Don't look at the character or the actor. Look at what they're trying to tell you. Look at the message they're trying to get across to you.
Looking at the current crop of television shows and the political climate, what makes the 90s sitcoms like California Dreams so special?
I think it's a very relatable. It's a relatable issues where you growing up, like I said, growing up in the 90s, you want to try and fit in with people. You want to, yeah. I think growing up for myself in the 90s was the fact that I couldn't, in a way, wait to leave school to get out into the real world. You have all these plans. I want to learn to drive a car. I want to learn to do this. I want to learn to do that. But then it's kind of telling you, slow down. Good things will come to those who wait, but slow down. Enjoy this particular moment that you are in right now in life. Enjoy school. Before you know it, it's over and you're out there in the real world. You're getting a job. You're doing this, that, and the other. You're off to university. And like I said, one thing I remember the most about California Dreams and what is relatable. Another episode that I like to mention as well. You know the episode where Jake's dad loses his job, but he's working as a janitor. And I thought, in a way, and Jake's like, oh, I'm embarrassed. My dad's cleaning a toilet where he used to be an airplane engineer, and people are mocking him. And but Jake's dad is basically saying to him, look, it's not about the fancy job. It's not about driving a fancy car. I've got a family to feed. I've got bills to pay. That's what he's trying to tell them as well, that regardless of anything, get whatever job that comes along the way, just so you can pay your bills and put food on the table. That, again, was an important message. And especially growing up in that era where you got to realize, especially growing up, when you're at school, you're about to leave school, it doesn't matter what job you get at the beginning, as long as you get a job and you know how to work, you know how to earn money, you know how to save money. That's the lesson it was trying to tell people out there. And then again, sometimes those lessons are not, so not to cut you short, Raymond, but sometimes those lessons we are not taught in school. You're not taught in school. You go out there in the real world to learn to gain that real life experience.
How is California Dreams different to current comedies?
To say the truth, I think it relates to a lot of real life issues and issues that people need to take into consideration before making a bad decision. I mean, nowadays, to tell you the truth, I haven't watched many shows these days, other than a few shows on Amazon Prime and Netflix. But I think I always thought all that stuff they used to talk about back in the 90s, mid 90s, early 90s was the fact that it's stuff that people can watch and say, I understand that. They can look at something else, oh yeah, I can relate to this as well. And that's what it was all about. It was talking about issues and topics that were completely relatable to people during that era. And even if people from this generation watch it now, they can look at it from that era and say the same thing too.
Why is it important to reflect on 1990s sitcoms like California Dreams? What did television shows in that period do right compared to the messages and themes in television shows made in this decade?
Well, as I mentioned previously as well, that when they talk about certain subjects, like excuse me, like stuff like the use of steroids, smoking, gambling, drugs, moving to a new place, adapting to new environments. It is something that is completely relatable, but you don't see it much often in today's day and age. I don't think you do. Like you see it a little bit, but it doesn't it just shows somebody, for example, doing drugs, but it doesn't come across to the bit where somebody's saying what you're doing now is going to affect you a lot more down the line. It's not doing that anymore. It's just talking about, okay, so someone's doing drugs. Okay, big deal. It's their body, it's their life. Do let them do what they want. But back then, in California Dreams era, was the fact that if somebody saw that, they will instantaneously stop them and say, look, you're not going to do this. You are not going to do this. You're going to stop this right now and you're going to get on with your life, regardless of whatever happened, regardless of whatever curveballs are coming your way. No, it's stopping now and you're going to move on with your life.
What was the most exciting part about being a fan of 90s TV shows? From my view, it was hard. It was hard work being a fan right in the 90s. You actually had to write letters and you send them away. And now you can just follow someone on Instagram. You can send a like.
I like that bit where you could I can remember the good old school way of just writing a letter and just putting it in the post and mailing it, and hopefully uh, a week or two down the line somebody will get it and then they'll say, oh yeah, I got your letter, thank you very much, I appreciate you being a fan and all that stuff. I love that show. I mean, even till today I could watch it and I could never get bored of it, even though you know what's going to happen, you know what they're going to say, you know what's going to happen to so and so, but you still enjoy it. It's that fond essence of nostalgia that isn't it doesn't come across nowadays in today's show. It really doesn't. It's just they've made something. Okay, let's get it out there. But in those shows, there it's touching base on something that can we can all know ourselves and that we've experienced and be like, all right, I understand where that individual's coming from. I could be relatable to that certain character.
Describe your opinions on the first and second season of California Dreams. You know, in the first season, the show focused on the Garrison family, and in the second season, we saw Jake Summers, and there was a shift to the band. Do you think the show should have stayed on the family, or was it better on focus on Jake and the band?
I think it was a mixture of both. It was nice meeting the family because you got to see what parents were like, especially like yourself as a teenager. You got to see what parents are like from a different culture, different aspect, different country. And the Garrison parents, they were really nice. I know, I understand that the actor who played the father passed away a few years ago. I forgot his name, Michael Cutt. That's just popped back in my head. I think that, yeah, I did remember speaking to him I spoke to him once or twice through Facebook, and I said to him, I liked you on the show. He goes, oh, that was a very long time ago. And I said, no, I still liked you. I thought you were a really cool dad. I think in a way it worked a little bit better when it shifted over from the parents to the band because it was about the dreams. It wasn't as much as the parents as it was the dreams. So it was kind of going in a different direction. When Jake came on board, I was remember mentioning this to Jay on my interview, and I said I can remember when you first came on the stage, he instantaneously stole the show, and he literally was. I can remember like every girl in the crowd was just screaming at him like, uh, who's this character that's popped up out of nowhere with the cool leather jacket and this bad boy attitude? He was kind of like the character everybody wanted to be like, to tell you the truth.
Do you think it would have been nice if Matt Garrison, the character, stayed on from season 1 to season 5 to show us the relationship growth between um, that character and Jake's character?
It would have been nice for him to stay on, to say the truth. I mean, I liked Matt. He was a good friend to his. He was a good person to his friends. He was a nice, likable character. And when I was a little bit disappointed when he left, but then because they said that when Jake came on, Jake would kind of become like Fonzie, and he'd be like Richie Cunningham of that era of Happy Days. And oh, they said, yeah, Sly would be like Ralph Malph, which he definitely was. I gotta admit, he was. But yeah, it would have been nice to see him on board. But then again, if he stayed on, I think he left because of, I think Brentley Gore, the actor who played him. I think the reason why he left was the fact that he didn't like the direction where it was going in. It was focusing less on music than it was. So it was, yeah, it was focusing more on the acting than it was focused more on the music, and that was one of the reasons why he had left. But I've been following him on Instagram. He's been doing very well for himself, and if he's watching, big shout out to Brentley Gore, and but yeah, it would have been cool to watch Matt, who started the band, see where it was like when it was ending. Would he have wanted to stay on? Would he have wanted to take the band to getting a record deal? It would have been cool if him and Jake ended up both getting a record deal together, set their differences aside, and were, all right, we've come so far. We both got the record deal together. Let's go through it together as well. It would have been really a cool ending to the show.
There were storylines that referenced other shows, Baywatch, 21 Jump Street, Saved by the Bell, Happy Days. Lorena, the character, jokingly called Jake the fake Fonz. Can you describe your favourite episodes and jokes and why? But then again, I think you might have already touched on this.
Actually, no. You just reminded me of something, and thank you to yourself, Raymond. There was one episode I remember where Tony was talking about his ancestral background, but it was kind of like it was an interesting subject where they were saying, "Oh, Sam's grand ancestors did this, but my ancestors did that. Lorena's parent ancestors did this, but my parents did that." But it was like it's that important message of saying that you can't change where you're from, but you can change where you're going. And one thing I liked about him, he learned to accept himself for who he was, and that was an important part of growing up as a teenager. You got to learn to accept yourself, and nobody says that to you. Be yourself, because you're still finding yourself, aren't you? To a certain extent, and that was quite interesting when he tried to, even though he tried to lie about how he was, but um but he came to accept it. Like, look, he was like, a lie is not going to help me get anywhere, become Mr. Popular. Even though he was popular for a bit, but it was all for the wrong reason. But then he decided afterwards, I'm going to confess I did this, I did that, and even the bits where they were talking about he was cheating on a test, but then he was like, he confessed, no, I was wrong, I shouldn't have cheated, I did this. Um, what else was there? There was another episode where oh yeah, where he had that shoulder injury, and all his friends were with him every step of the way, even though he was scared to go under the knife to get his shoulder fixed. And they were like, "Look, it doesn't regardless what happened." Even though Sly caused it himself, but he fessed up to it as well, saying, "No, look, I was wrong. What I did, I got a bit greedy." Again, it's the message: don't get greedy for money because you could hurt the wrong person all along the way. And he realized his friendship to Tony was way more important than money. I can remember he injured him because of a quarter he found on the ground or something like that. And yeah, it was again really inspirational subjects that they would be talking about.
One of my favorite jokes was, when Tiffany's playing, in the Western episode, where she's in
Oh
Native
yes,
American
yes, yeah.
costume,
That
and
was a
they're
funny one.
talking about they're talking about dinner, and she goes, I made reservations.
Yeah, I remember that. It was funny. That was funny. And the reference they put in there for Schwarzenegger, Sheriff Schwarzenegger, and he's like, he left and he said, "I won't be back." And the other bit, and that was the song at the end was just the most hilarious song I'd ever seen. Like shouting out injuries, do this to that person, do that to that person. And one of them, that actor there, Richard T. Jones, he went on to do the series The Rookie, and he's a phenomenal actor. And one of the funny things Michael Caine's character did in that episode was every time you saw him, he was a different character, which was just so hilarious. And Matt with the guitar, like singing the Western theme, but Jake kind of brought an essence of Clint Eastwood when he just popped up out of nowhere with the cool gun. He's like spinning it like a proper Western character. And it was cool. It brought back nostalgia to people who grew up in the 90s, 60s and 90s who watched Clint Eastwood, and then they see this kind of young Eastwood type bringing it into that generation of the time.
There were not many homegrown television shows that featured a cast that represented my ethnic background, Pacific Islander, or a show that featured a mixed group of
Yeah.
people. It was great to see a diverse cast. It was also good seeing them get along and not getting stressed over political issues, and just enjoying
Yeah.
life together, not getting hung up on race, just
No.
accepting each other for who they are, and what they like to do. So what was your reaction?
I mean, when I watched it back then, when it originally aired, I didn't think too much of it again, like I said, because I was young. I had friends growing up. I had friends growing up who were like of different ethnicity, different backgrounds, different colors, different race, different religions. It didn't matter. We just all got on with each other, and that was the best thing. That it was again another important message it was given out. But regardless of anything, we're all human at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if your background. if you can get on with another human being, then that's what that comes down to. You don't need the permission of the individuals to say, don't hang out with this person, that person, because of this, that, and the other. No, it doesn't matter. If they give you respect, you give it back, and that's where it comes down to.
The characters had very different singing styles and performance styles. So who was your favourite singer and performer?
Jake was a really great singer. I liked Mark Winkle. He again was really another good singer as well. He was a bit more cool. I think, Jake was a bit more. He could be a bit smooth sometimes, but then you could feel a bit more of the hard rock coming out of him as well. Tony was quite cool. He mixed. We had a bit of singing and rapping all added together. But like I said, each one of them was just fantastic in their own unique way. And again, I was sad when the show ended. It was one of those shows that I wish it could go on a little bit longer.
When you heard Jay Anthony Franke perform Lever and Loose, I actually quite like that style of voice. He does actually have a nice voice. Do you wish that the network let him use his real voice for all of the songs?
Most definitely, yeah. Because I remember when I was watching the behind the scenes stuff, because they said that they had to audition in two ways. They had to audition with singing as well as acting, but they had to obviously know that they could do both jobs before they can get a part. I know Kelly Packard herself had 9 auditions, and it was just crazy how but she goes, at the end of the day, she just got the part, and that's what happened with all of them. They all had to basically learn. They had to do everything together. I think other than Michael Cade, but they had to make sure obviously the studio had to make sure, okay, we need actors who can sing as well as act at the same time, and it worked out for the best.
Jay Franke was on your show, so.
Oh, he was.
So he was
yeah.
So he was a guest on your show. You grew up watching him. You admired him. So can you describe that experience of talking to him in real and having a real conversation with him?
It was one of those pinch me moments, to tell you the truth. I felt like I had traveled back in time to talk to him, and I said that to him as well, bless him. And I was just blown away. Like, this is the guy I grew up watching on TV and admiring him so much. And like I said before, if you spoke to me 30 years ago and somebody said to me, you're going to be talking to this guy one day down the line, I'd be laughing in their face. But then nowadays, I couldn't keep my laughter together. It was one of those episodes where I admit I tried my best to maintain professionalism, but there wasn't that much chance because I was just blown away by talking to such a living legend. And to me, he was just such a nice guy, such a cool individual. And to me, he was just like, I said to him as well when I was talking to him about the show, like, when he said, I could have done this a bit better, I could have done that better. And I said, as a fan of the show, there was nothing to perfect. It was already there. I mean, for an actor new to a series that's already established, and he comes on and every person in the crowd is screaming for him, that's lightning in a bottle. And that's one of those rarities that doesn't happen very often, but it happened in the case of Jay Anthony Franke. He just came out. He had this presence where he loves the camera, but the camera loved him even more in return. And like all the cool stuff he would do, like, it's one of the best things I liked about his character was when you meet Matt when he meets Matt Garrison for the first time, and he's threatening him. You think there's going to be a fight happening, and he's like, "No, I can't defend myself." And he's doing this, and I was doing that to him on the interview. It was like, and he started doing it as well. So it was quite funny. And when he goes, "Now I like your song. I just want to talk to you about your music," and he finds out himself, he's a musician. He writes poems all the time, and that was an interesting twist about it. But Jay himself said that when he got the part, it was just before his 21st birthday, so it worked out well for him. The checks were coming through. He managed to celebrate his birthday properly, and he was I think he was kind of like struggling to find work as an actor, but he managed to get it. But I was again blown away, and I told quite a lot of my friends, and I said, do you like, why does this guy look familiar to me while you're on the show? I said, did you ever watch California Dreams? Yeah. Do you remember Jake Summers? Yeah, that's who he is. Goes, get out of here. Oh, that's him. That's him right there. Hey, I'll send you the link. I sent them the link, and one friend I hadn't seen in 17 years because he lives in another city, and I went to see him and I said, "How?" He goes, "How's the YouTube going? And you have you interviewed anyone famous?" And I said, "Yeah." Sent this show. He goes, "Do you remember California Dreams vaguely? Did you remember the guy with the leather jacket?" He goes, "I type his name." He goes, he's like this on his phone. How the heck did you get him on your phone? How? What's the thing? And I said to him, "Look, I sent him a Facebook message. I asked him, look, I'm a big fan of your show. I know the 30-year anniversary is coming up. I would like to interview you. Would you be interested?" He goes, "Yeah, when would you like me on the show?" That's all he said. Got it in the bag. And, Jay, bless him, he has my respect forever. And I'm eternally grateful. And he came back on in the New Year's video to wish everybody Happy New Year as well. That's what we do. And again, if he's watching, I wish him all the best.
I follow him on Instagram and Facebook, and I see him on podcasts. And, he's very consistent. He's authentic. He's, makes a lot of time. He's, real, I guess, and he's just like one of us, really.
Yeah, he does. He just feels like he's one of the lads. And he goes, if he ever comes to England, he just wants to sit down and have a Guinness or something. And I said, all right, fine, but you can have the Guinness, and I'll stick with the coffee. We'll do that. Same thing applies to yourself as well, yeah, Raymond?
Sure. What impressed you the most about Jay Anthony Franke when you talked to him?
It was just his presence. His overall presence was just a fantastic thing because there was no ego. There was no like you said, I'm like this. I'm like, he was just so cool and so calm, and that's what would just impress me the most. Is like this guy you grew up watching on TV, and he's just as cool as the character he portrayed. Literally, that's what it was. He just embodied that character, but realistically, he embodied it. He maintained himself, and he was just, such a nice guy. And again, I hope to have another interview with him down the line, to tell you the truth. I really do. Find out how's it been going recently, because I know he's had a few reunions with the other cast members. Some of them he hadn't seen in a while, like Diana, who played Lorena, and he hadn't seen her since the reunion. I think it was in New York City, and it was good to see. It was good to see that again.
How do you compare following the stars from the show on their social media channels with the way things, used to be in the 1990s? We had real TV guides. We didn't have Instagram. We just had to watch them on TV.
I mean, that's one of the best things of social media, where you get to follow people you admire, where you get inspiration from. And that's the great thing. And Jay, bless him, he's doing very well for himself. Same thing with Brentley Gore. He's into his music. I know Aaron Jackson, who played Mark Winkle, he's an acting teacher now. Michael Cade he's had a daughter recently. Who else is there? Kelly Packard, she's obviously, bless her, she's the mother of 4 or 5 kids, I believe. Jenny Kwan, she's still smashing it, doing a lot of great stuff. And that was interesting because, like I say, yeah, we had magazines, you had to write fan letters and send them over. But that's one of the benefits of social media. You get to see them instantaneously as soon as you pick your phone up, and it's like, oh, that's what so-and-so is doing. This is what so-and-so is doing. It's nice that they're still maintaining their craft after so many years.
Any of the stars from the show surprised you?
Well, to tell you the truth, what surprised me the most is how most of them still look exactly the same. That's what surprised me. Like, what is the secret? How do you do that and everything? But one thing I liked about Jay was the fact that he's rescued a few stray dogs. He's still playing the guitar as exceptionally well. I think one of the biggest things that surprised me the most was about William James Jones. That when I found out once that he's no longer an actor, he's gone into the clinical psychology business, and he's doing very well. He's got his own clinic, and I would love to talk to him about it. How does one go from acting to clinical psychology? Where was the inspiration? And that's what really surprised me most. He wanted to help people on a higher level. And if you can help people on a higher level like that, like find out what is the core of an individual's problems that affects their overall life, he's doing something right. He's definitely doing something right.
Let's say California Dreams gets rebooted.
Where have the
Right.
characters been for the last 29 years?
Yes. Yes. Okay. It would be interesting to know what they were up to for the last 30 plus years because I can remember the last episode. Sam goes off to Oxford University, I think, to study physics. And then you have Mark who goes off to Juilliard to study music. You had Tony going off to study acting, but you don't know where he's gone. Sly and Lorena went to one school. Tiffani goes off to Hawaii, but Jake's still staying there. But he ended up getting a record deal as well. And he says, I can remember that episode where he goes, "I got to sign that contract." Again, it's that message. Take the opportunity while it's there being presented. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of a big star Jake became. Also, what kind of a big name in the music business that Mark became as well. What did Sly and Lorena study after leaving university? What did they do after university? What a big actor Tony became as well. It would be so interesting to see how they all. And then what would be even more interesting if they all had kids and their kids kind of reformed the California Dreams band for the next generation. Kind of like, for example, Cobra Kai, the series Cobra Kai, where fantastic show, has a lot of nostalgia in there from the 80s. And it was quite interesting to see how a show 30, 40 years ago, sorry, a movie 30, 40 years ago impacted the next generation, where nowadays, when back then it was just karate, it was taekwondo, it was traditional martial arts. Nowadays it's all MMA. But what did the old school style of karate do on this generation now? The impact it can have. And that'll be the same thing from California Dreams. What could that type of music have back then that it has now and in this generation?
Let's wrap up this interview with a game, the World Series, this or that. British pop culture versus American pop culture. And let's see which place wins the World Series.
The Beatles or the Eagles?
Beatles, hands down.
James Bond or Jason Bourne?
I like them both. I got to admit to that. They're both known for the good tacticians and suaveness. So 50-50, I'm going to split the score there.
Train Spotting or Pulp Fiction?
Pulp Fiction.
Our Mate Marmite and Cheese Sandwich or Peanut Butter and Jelly Sandwich?
Tell you the truth, even as a foodie, I've never tried either one of them, so I can't make a comment on that. But I'm a big fan of peanut butter and cheese, so yeah.
Would you put Marmite together with peanut butter and jelly? Just see how it would be like.
If I was desperately hungry, then yeah, I'll do it.
Okay.
Burn Brew or Coca-Cola?
Iron Brew.
Rugby Union or Basketball?
I say basketball.
Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien or The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain?
Lord of the Rings.
Bruce Forsyth's Generation Game or Steve Harvey's Family Feud?
I was a big fan of Bruce Forsyth, so yeah, I'll stick with Bruce. Nice to see you nice.
Coronation Street or Sunset Beach?
I would say probably Sunset Beach.
This was A2A Bar Review. Questions were asked and they were answered. I'm Raymond. Keep on keeping on. Good night.